Okay, so in this video we're talking about algebraic expressions and some basic operations, okay? So let's go ahead and get started with it. Alright, so what's a numeric expression? So that's what we're really going to start off with, because this is what we really start off with in like kindergarten, elementary school. So numeric expression, keyword here is numeric. Okay, numeric just means number. So it's just some kind of expression with only numbers. So for example, 2 plus 2. Now notice I didn't put an equal there, okay? An expression does not have equals in it. Equations have equals. So expression, that just means no equals. No equal. Alright? And then what's power? Well, power is just essentially fast multiplication. Some people call that repeated multiplication. So for instance, if I have 2 to the third, well, this 2 to the third, this is called a power. Okay? It has 2 parts. The number 2 here is called a base. And the number 3 up here in the air is called the power or exponent. Different books, you'll see different things. I typically call it a whole thing collectively a power. But what it means, what we're doing with it, I'll just close my screen, sorry about that. Okay. What it means is, I'm just going to rewrite it. So that's 2 cubed. That just means I take my base, whatever my base is, and I multiply it by itself, however many times the power is. So I have 2 times 2 times 2. Took the base and multiplied it by itself 3 times because my power was 3. That's all it essentially is. Okay. What's the order of operations? Well, you know this. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So we're going to take care of parentheses, exponents, multiplication and division, and then addition and subtraction. Okay, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally is really just a kind of a phrase to help you remember that. A lot of people know that. Or please excuse my dread expunge. I've heard different variations on that. But what we need to remember, what people often forget, is that this is from left to right. Okay, there's all these problems going around floating on Facebook and things like that about different problems, different expressions, simplifying it using the order of operation. And what people forget is you got to take care of left to right. So what that means is, let's say you have, oops, and I meant the right subtraction here, not AS for subtraction. What that means, let's say you had subtraction and then addition. Well, you take care of this in terms of left to right. You would take care of the subtraction first before the addition. Okay? And why are the order of operations important? Well, I mean, you think about it. If we didn't have a set standard, a set order of operations, you could get a certain answer, I could get a certain answer, your friend could get a certain answer, their friend could get a certain answer, and there's no guarantee that we would all get the same answer if we're not doing all the same things. So this is kind of a standard that sets the bar for what we should do. That way, if I go over to China, I go over to Europe, I go anywhere in the world where you're all using the same order of operations, so we all should be getting the same answer. So it's a very important tool. Okay, so we want to take care of this. Now, obviously, we can type this in the calculator exactly the way it looks if we're not sure, okay? But this is rather simple, so we're going to just try to do this by hand as much as possible. So, order of operations, that's all we're practicing here. So, the order of operations says take care of parentheses first. So, I'm going to do -2 plus 5. So, we have -4. So, everything else is going to stay the same. So, -2 plus 5 is 3 squared. I'm just taking this one step at a time. As time goes on, I'll take out some of these baby steps. Take care of exponents next. -4 plus 2 times 3 squared is 9. Now multiplication. And then finally addition. So 14 is my final answer, so I like to circle or box my final answer. I would recommend you do the same thing because you've got lots of work here, and if you don't circle or box your final answer, it's very easy to get confused of what's what. So final answer here, when you simplify everything down, is 14. If you're not sure, verify it with a calculator. Type it in exactly the way it looks. So what's a variable? So a lot of people just say a variable is x. Well, it doesn't have to be just x. It could be y, it could be z, it could be theta, it could be alpha, it could be anything. It could be a smiley face, whatever you want to do. So let's put a smiley face up here too. Okay? A variable is just something that represents an unknown quantity. So I'm going to say something that represents an unknown number. Okay, something that represents an unknown number, unknown quantity, whatever you want to call it. Okay? What's an algebraic expression? So here we already know expression means no equals. The algebraic just means, hey, we have numbers and variables. So the expression that has numbers and variables. Okay, so for instance, 2x plus 3 is an algebraic expression. And then how do we how do we evaluate algebraic expressions? Well, that just simply means combine like terms. So combine like terms. And if they give us a certain value we want to evaluate at, then we also plug in. Plug in what we know and then simplify. So for instance, here I'm told if x is equal to -2, then what does this equal? So first I'm going to just plug in everywhere I see an x, I'm going to put in a -2. And then I'm going to simplify the problem down as much as I can. So I have this is equal to -3 times -2 squared minus 5 times -2 plus 7. Now something I want to point out real quick, I had a -2 that I'm squaring. If you're doing that in your calculator, you need to be sure you put these parentheses around it, okay? Otherwise the calculator's program is going to read it. So this is how your calculator reads -2 squared. If you type it in like that without parentheses. It's going to say, all right, -1 times 2 squared, which is -1 times 4, which is -4. Well, we all know -2 squared, it should be -2 squared. If we include our parentheses, it's just equal to -2 times -2, which is +4. So it's very, very important that you include these parentheses here when you're doing, if you have negatives in your square. Otherwise, your calculator is going to read it just like this, and it's reading it correctly. So you need to be sure you include those parentheses. So that was a little caveat for you. So now let's keep simplifying. So we know -2 squared is +4, so we have -3 times 4, negative make it positive, so plus 10 plus 7. -3 times 4 is -12 plus 17. -12 plus 17 is 5. And again, circle or square your final answer. All right, so what's the parts of an algebraic expression? Well, we have terms, variables, those are in there, coefficients, and constants. So for example, let's say I had this algebraic expression, 2x plus 1. Well, this algebraic expression has two terms, it has two main pieces. This is one of the main pieces, and this is one of the main pieces. Each one of those main pieces is called a term. Okay? Obviously, we know what a variable is. It represents an unknown quantity. We just talked about that a few minutes ago. Coefficients are the number in front of the variable. That just tells me how many of those unknown numbers do I have. How many x's do I have, okay? How many apples do I have? And then constants are just numbers without variables attached to them, okay? So what are like terms? Well, like terms are just numbers that are of the same form. So for instance, numbers of the same form. So for example, 2x and 3x are like terms because they both have x. X squared and negative 5x squared are like terms. 1 and 2 are like terms, okay? So essentially, the variables have to be the same or they have to be constants. Now, what are constant terms? Well, we just talked about that. So numbers without a variable attached. So if you think about what the word variable means, variable literally means changing, okay? It's able to change dynamically. Whereas constant, if you think about what that means, it stays the same. So constant just stays the same no matter what happens. Okay? And how do we simplify algebraic expressions? We talked about this on the previous slide, but it's just simply combine like terms. And don't forget to simplify. Okay? So here's a few examples. We'll go through these. It shouldn't take too long. So here I have 7x and 4x. Altogether I have 11x. Final answer, so I want to square it. Okay, here I need to watch out for my like terms. N squares go with n squares. N's go with n's. So I have 3n squared minus 1n squared, so I have 2n squares altogether. Here, my regular n's are n to the first power does not have any like terms, so I'm just going to bring it along for the ride. So that's it. And then finally here, for the last problem, I need to do a little bit of distributive properties, so I'm going to do that first. So I'm going to take one piece at a time. So this first piece is 2x plus 2. And then finally, hey, watch out for this negative right here, okay? A lot of people will forget that negative and get it wrong. So it's negative 3 times both pieces, so minus 3x plus 12. Now we can combine like terms. Well, 2x minus 3x is equal to negative x. 2 plus 12 is 14. That's that. Okay, that's it for this video.